First and Cam, alongside my co-host Evan, we are back with another mailbag episode. We are answering your guys' questions that you guys have for us for this college football offseason going into the 26-27 season. So let's just start it off right away. Who would you consider an elite coach in college football going into this season?
I
Evan, I'll
think we
let you go
have,
first.
yeah. So I think I'll answer it and you go ahead and answer it too. Obviously, Signetti
Hmm.
is an elite coach. I think that he gets a lot of slack, but Alabama Kalen DeBoer is an elite coach. I think Marcus Freeman is an elite coach. And so I think and the list goes on and on. Dan Lanning's up there as well. I think Mario Cristobal is an elite recruiter as well. Ryan Day. I think college football is very much loaded coming into what I think is going to be an even more special season than we just saw. But those are my elite coaches. I'm probably missing a couple that are out there, but for the most part, that's who I think is going to be elite. Who do you have up there?
Well, when I saw this question, it kind of made me think of the actual levels to the coaching hierarchy. And for me, the elite has to stop at three. And so my three are Signetti, of course. I think we can both agree is number one. And
Mm,
then Kirby Smart, number
mm,
two, and Ryan Day, number three. I think after that, the list has to kind of get cut off because I don't think Marcus Freeman, Sarkisian, the rest of those guys are in that class. And I think these guys have kind of separated themselves as the top three. I guess we'll see after this season, but I wouldn't have said Signetti's in this race after last season. And so he jumped in after going undefeated and having a national championship team. So he's right there, number one. It could change, but going into next season, those are my three.
who's the best coach
Signetti.
in in the conference? Signetti.
Signetti's the best coach. Yeah,
Okay. Is the
100%.
Big Ten the best, most well-rounded coaching conference, you think, or no?
No, I still think it is the SEC. I think you have to, all things included, I still think Drinkwitz is a good coach at Mizzou. I still think Sarkisian is a good coach. I think, um, who is at
Lane
I mean,
Kiffin.
obviously Lane Kiffin, DeBoer, like you
Hmm.
said, like there's just a little bit deeper of a coaching our talent tree in the SEC, but I mean, Signetti and Ryan Day, I would say, are two of the top three.
And then Dan Lanning too, as far
Yeah,
as I mean, I know Oregon
Big
hasn't
Ten,
hasn't
right? Yeah.
won, but it's close. So okay, I'm with that. And so, what do you expect from Indiana next season? Question two.
Well, yeah, I would think that they take a step back. I think the kid Josh Hoover is coming in from TCU to Indiana. I think he's going to have a lot of expectations on his shoulders, whether that's right or wrong. I think with a coach like Signetti, you're always going to be in the hunt to compete for a national championship. But I mean, if Indiana loses two games this year, I won't be surprised because now they're facing teams where, Indiana's now circled on people's schedules. Believe it or not, whether you want that to be the reality of the situation, they have a bullseye on their back and they're going to get everybody's best shot. So I expect them to compete. I expect them to be in the playoff, whether that's winning the Big Ten or getting that at large. But I don't see them going undefeated. And I think the expectations of where the QB play needs to be with Hoover is not going to be as high with Mendoza and just how he willed that team to win. So I don't expect anything less than 10 wins, but I'm not expecting them to go undefeated again.
I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana went undefeated again. I think they have the absolute potential to do so. The way I look at Indiana as a football team, the way they're constructed, the way Kurt Signetti has built that team, the way he coaches them, is they are Iowa disciplined with, I think, Ohio State offense is how I would structure that team. And so I think it's really easy to build consistency when that is built into the DNA of the head coach and that like oozes out of the players, right? They're confident as they play, but they're very disciplined. You don't beat them
Mm.
often and they don't beat themselves at all. So I would expect maybe obviously like them going undefeated again, like would probably be unrealistic. You're probably right at two losses. I would say they drop one in a highly like contested game, but I would see them right back in the final four of the college football playoff and battling out to get into the national championship. I really do believe that's realistic for that team.
For that to be realistic is pretty insane because to
Right.
predict anybody to go back into the semifinals that's not named Ohio State, Texas, or one of those teams is it's pretty incredible kind of standard to be set at yeah, at that school. My next question was your preseason. What is your preseason top five? I'll start with mine. Ohio State at number one. I think Julian Sand, Jeremiah Smith, and just the collection of guys that are going to be on that defense. I know they lose talent on defense, but it's Ohio State. They're replenishing. Number two, I have Georgia. I think Gunnar Stockton's going to have a really good year. add him with Kirby Smart and the talents in that backfield that comes back, they're going to be really good. Three, Texas, they got a really good transfer portal cycle. I think Arch Manning is going to be really good this year. For Oregon, Dante Moore coming back, I would have probably put them lower on this list had he not come back, but I think you know, he has to have a good year after how it ended against Indiana. I think he has no choice. And
Mhm.
then I'm putting Indiana at 5 because if you win a national championship and go undefeated, you have the same coach and you bring a lot of your core back. I think you have to prove that you're not a top 5 team still. And then those two teams after that, Texas A&M and M and Texas Tech, I think they have a real shot to make some more noise this year. Texas A&M kind of disappointed me in the playoff against Miami. And I think Texas Tech, with the money that they have swirling around that program, they're always just going to be able to compete. And I think they should at least start in the top 10 and prove if they're, in there or not. And then that's kind of where my list kind of stops at that 5 to 7 range. How about you?
Yeah, I think we need to do a top 10 list at some point as a separate video. Just come back on here and really needle it out. But to me, in this is kind of an order of what I see it. I have Indiana at one, Ohio State at two, Oregon at three, Georgia at four, LSU at five.
Mm.
That's who I see as the top five. I think that Indiana, I think they're the best coached team in the country, and that obviously matters.
That has to
That
count for some.
they're also probably the best at evaluating talent, so that also counts in my opinion. I think Ohio State returns a lot of guys that I think could be individually the best at their position. I think Oregon, going into this season, Oregon was not supposed to be a national title contender. Like that is not where they were projected to be. They lost a bunch of guys the previous season, and they're losing more this year. But their quarterback played very well, and he's coming back. And so to me, for them to be anything outside of the top five, I don't know that that's responsible. And then Georgia, I just can't doubt Kirby Smart. And then LSU, I think Lane has something to prove.
Yeah.
Again, weirdly enough, even though Ole Miss
He
was a couple
definitely
steps
has
away from,
his expectations for him this year are very high. Very
which
high.
which is fair because he's earned some slack in my
He's earned
opinion, but
all of
he
it. The
won't get it.
expectations, the
Yeah.
hate, the optim like he's earned all of it. He's earned all of it. So
So that's fair, but I think that they're a top five team. I think that LSU with a real offense is a scary team, and if they can keep that defense, and Blake Baker's going to be the defensive coordinator there still, they've got a shot to be a sensational team. So that's my top five. Help me understand who the next question on this list is the best quarterbacks coming into next season. Give me three to five that you think. I've got a couple myself.
well, I kind of want to frame that question a little bit different because last year, if you would asked me who the top 5 quarterbacks coming into next year, I would have said Kate Klubnik. I would have said Drew Aller. I would have
Yeah.
said Arch Manning. I would have said, um, oh my gosh, there's other names that I'm just thinking of. DJ Lagway, like just not obviously literally all of those guys literally just either had a horrible season or the team was bad or both.
Mhm.
And so I have 5 sleeper quarterbacks who I think could make a big jump into next year. I kind of rephrased the question a little bit. So if you have just your best quarterbacks, and that's okay. But my 5 quarterbacks going to next year that have either transferred or are in new situations, or I think they're just going to take a step up. The first one I think is an obvious answer. JKS from Cal, Jaron Keyway, Sakapulatele. He has a chance to be the best quarterback in the nation next year. Maybe the stats won't back it up, but he's clearly high on draft boards when
Mhm.
he enters the draft in 2028. Byron Brown, the kid from USF who's now at Auburn, I think he has a really good chance to bring some juice back to this program. Kind of like a hard-nosed, tough football player. He's very small, but he's electric, and then that's kind of what works in college football. Rocco Becht at Penn State, I think he has a chance to have a good season at Penn State. Iowa State last year, who we'll be rooting for this year, of course, was a decent team. And Will Campbell, I think, is a good coach. I think everything just gets heightened at Penn State, and now you're in the Big Ten, and now your rivals are now some of the best teams in the country: Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State. So we'll see what happens. I think he has a chance to have a really good season. Kevin Jennings at SMU has a chance to have SMU return back to the playoffs. I think he was a good quarterback last year. SMU just took a really big dip as far as just their execution. I think the coaching wasn't very great. I expected them last year to kind of be in that mix in the ACC, and they just weren't. And I think the ACC, with being kind of a down conference, will have you have a question about an ACC team later on that we'll get to, and then Devin Dampier from Utah, who was supposed to have a really good year last year, transferring in from New Mexico, and the team was just okay. And we had preseason ranked top 25. Utah kind of in and out of that all year. But now I think, Utah is a real team. I think they're going to be better than BYU this year. And I think, Devin Dampier is going to be the reason for that. So those are my five kind of sleeper quarterbacks going into next year.
Okay, that's an interesting take on that question. Because and by the way, Byron Brown's 6'3". He's big as hell. You
Yeah.
said he was small. He's a big ass dude. I agree with mostly with that list. I think that there are some guys that I think can make a huge leap. I think Arch Manning obviously could be more consistent start to finish of the season. So that's something I'm going to be watching for. I think Drew Mestamaker, we're going to find out if
Yes.
his production can scale in a power, four conference. Again, I don't know how much better the Big 12 is going to be as far as competition goes, but can he bring Oklahoma State back into the conversations where like it was Brandon Weeden was there and they were throwing up numbers, him and I think Justin Blackman was there as well. So that kind of a throwback, but let's see if Oklahoma State can get back to prominence. And then like you mentioned JSK, I like him a lot too. I think that he could be a Heisman candidate. He plays in a conference where like if they're just a little bit better, like they had a chance to win
Yeah.
and beat. I don't remember who it was, but they would have if they would have won, they would have been in the like picture to be in the ACC championship game, and so they could have been a team that got in as well. So like that, I'm looking for them in that as far as like where that production goes. Can he scale to the next level? True freshman played really well. Okay, like do we get a sophomore slump or do we get a step up in what he can do? And I want to see Dante Moore take another leap as well. I know people were
Mm.
high on him. I wasn't very high on him. I thought that when the competition got really tight, he was very loose with the football. He threw a couple of good passes, but a lot of it was inaccurate. A lot of it were just lollipops that were underthrown, deep balls especially. So I want to see him grow in that area. I'm hoping that Dan Lanning, Oregon can get it figured out
Yeah.
because the Big Ten is going to be a lot of fun to watch. They got three really good teams, and I think these are three actual good teams versus we've seen Penn State where it's like they're supposed to be really good, but for whatever reason they just can't put it all together. I think the Big Ten has a chance to be really entertaining
Mhm.
all season. So and UCLA is a new coach. So those are the guys that I like. Byron Brown is on my list as well. I think that he has the chance to bring that Auburn like dual threat, the Nick Marshall, the Cam Newton, like get back to what a national championship title team looks like with them, which is really good defense and a quarterback that can just move the football with his legs or with his arm. He's going to will his team to win. So I'm very much looking forward to Auburn coming up. Now, the next question you had that you received was what transfer portal rule would you implement? I think this is a really interesting one. I'll answer this one, then I'll let you go.
Yeah.
If I was going to take this one just off like top of my head, I would say I think you're allowed to be at one school per year. All right, whatever calendar year it is. So it's 2026. All right, if you whatever school you're enrolled at in 2026, you cannot leave until 2027, until January 2027. So I don't want guys playing for a school for one semester, then transferring, or you're here for summer and then you want to get into the portal for the next. No, I think you'd be at one school for an entire year before you can actually transfer. None of this transfer window stuff. One school, 1 year. What are your thoughts?
That's fair. I like that. Mine would just simply be you get one free transfer. And if you stay at one school for all 4 years, you get granted a fifth. And maybe those are two separate rules, but I think transferring one time would fix a lot of the psychological effects of the transfer portal. There's that looming, lingering, dangling carrot that is the transfer portal for a lot of players, and that's an exit strategy. It's an excuse for why you didn't play. It's an excuse for me guys who are not as good as they think they are, so they want to test the transfer portal for no reason other than either not working hard or not liking your situation that you're in. And usually the grass isn't as green on the other side as people would like to think. And so when you get guys who transfer two or three times, and then Jeff Teague talked about it a lot of his podcasts, like these guys that are transferring two or three times are not even graduating.
Mhm.
And so it's putting a hindrance on a lot of these kids' real and potentially professional lives by transferring a whole bunch. And a lot of these people don't really even know it. You're leaving college without a degree, or you were in college long enough to get a master's degree and didn't get it. And so it's like, you're getting your school paid for. Why take that risk and why take that opportunity to not? So I think if you stay all 4 years at a school, registered or not, then you get that extra fifth year eligibility, which they're granting everybody anyway. And then you get one free chance to transfer, and then you have to sit out, whether that's a semester or an entire year, you have to sit out.
Okay, so I probably should think deeper on my response then, but what happens if a coach leaves? How does that impact your free transfer?
Well, I think that there has to be certain stipulations for the free transfer rule. The free transfer rule has to be because you don't like the situation, wrong fit, too far away from home, whatever the case may be. Now, if coach leaves, school gets hit with some scandal or some sanctions and it affects the recruiting and the future of the
Sure.
program, then sure, you get to transfer. But other than that, no.
Okay, so like a black swan. Okay. So then would you say there should be a rule around coaches leaving and the amount of players they can bring to a new
Well, I
situation?
think that the buyouts have to be a reconstructed idea. And what happens is a lot of these coaches who, because it goes both ways. The coaches are always looking to upgrade their situation, but then these schools get super impatient and think that they have the next gym that's going to come in their program, and
Hmm.
so this coach gets $50 million, or this coach is, or a school's tampering with the coach, and a coach is flirting with another school, and halfway through the season the coach is checked out, or the schools come to a mutual agreement that they're going to part ways, and then 2 weeks later, guy's already got a new school that he's at. I think it's tricky because the players are in a different situation than the coaches. I think there has to be some sort of contract negotiation rule where the buyout has to be a certain number based on a certain amount of years. And then I think on the coach's side, there has to be some sort of clause that, like, if you leave a school or you want to, I don't know if there's like a no-show clause or something that you can implement that makes a coach sit out for a year or a season if he so
Okay.
desperately wants to leave the school.
Okay. So we definitely need to circle back on this one and make this a fuller episode as far as
Yeah.
how we would handle this. Because the other question I have is let's say your rule does get implemented. I would call your rule a superstar unfriendly rule. And the reason for it is I think NIL for these guys would go down. If you could only transfer one time, I think the opportunities for you to make money drop as opposed to them going up. Meaning schools don't have to pay you as much money to stay because you only get one transfer. And if you've been
True.
transferred one time, then you don't necessarily have to get that second year you're there, I don't have to pay you anything because you can't transfer. You're stuck. And so I think that could be, you could inadvertently kill NIL, which some people would consider a really good thing.
Hmm.
I just think that it would be very top heavy. You get guys that would get paid a ton of money, and then nobody's going to transfer to another small school because they don't have the opportunity to go up again. So that would be very interesting to play out kind of all the scenarios. Maybe we need to have a deeper conversation
Good point.
on,
Yeah.
that one because that's interesting. And then the last question that you had: does Mizzou have a real chance with Austin Simmons, Ahmad Hardy, and the rest of the transfer class? They lost a lot of talent already. Defense is shaky. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's going to be tough. And Austin Simmons, what he showed at Ole Miss, I think was enough for Mizzou fans to have some hope. But it definitely doesn't help that, once he got back healthy, he wasn't able to kind of take that spot back from Trinidad Chambliss, which Trinidad Chambliss might just be a better player for all we know. I think Ahmad Hardy, and obviously you have Jamal Roberts in the backfield too. Those are two guys that you're gonna have to really feed the rock to. Ahmad Hardy is a preseason Heisman candidate for me. So I think on offense, they have potential to have enough. They have a good wide receiving core. They did lose Kevin Coleman, but they got some transfers in. Um, I just my thing is that the question, the name that should be in this question really is Eli Drinkwitz, and
No,
what is he
correct.
going to do to elevate this program? Because what I've seen him do is make them relevant, but in a way where, okay, Mizzou is just not like a Mississippi State, or I can't even say Vanderbilt anymore, but like South Carolina and Kentucky have kind of fallen to the wayside of the SEC conversations, and Mizzou has kind of entered that. Vanderbilt has entered that. So for and I think Vanderbilt is a good litmus test for a lot of these coaches and programs in the SEC. Like, okay, this program was really bad for a really long time. Now they're gaining some relevance and they're winning games. What are schools like South Carolina, Mizzou, um, what are schools like that doing? Schools like Tennessee, what are those schools doing to elevate their programs? And I think it starts with the coach. And then the Kurt Cignetti rule that is going to be kind of like an unwritten rule in the coaching handbook is how fast can you turn around a program with the resources that we give you?
Hmm.
And so I think it starts with Eli Drinkwitz, what he's able to bring in, and then his actual coaching job, the X's and O's on the field. Can Mizzou elevate? Because I think their secondary has always been shaky. Ever since Mizzou's had really, really good offenses in the early 2010s, it's been a shaky secondary that's always let them down. So can they get that right in the secondary? I don't know because these SEC quarterbacks are only getting better.
Okay, I would agree partially with that. I have a problem with the way Mizzou plays their SEC schedule and that offense doesn't scale into the harder parts of their season. We
Yeah,
looked
it's
at
too
Ahmad
top heavy
Hardy,
every year. Yeah.
Jamal Roberts. Yeah, they play a lot of cupcakes and then it gets really difficult really fast. That's just hard to do. It's hard to play against. But I'm not seeing Drink scale his team to competing. I felt like the Vanderbilt game, for all the hype that the Mizzou run game gets, I
Mhm.
feel like the Vanderbilt game was one where you didn't have to beat them or blow them out. We didn't have to blow them out, but you had to beat them. You had to win that game. Your ground game should have just taken the game over. It should have been picking up first downs on 2nd and 6, converting 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 routinely, with just running the football. Backup freshman quarterback in the game or not. Like if the run game's going to be that dominant, that should have been shown and showcased, and it just wasn't. And so I have a lot of questions about this team. I'm not sure what the future for Drink is at Mizzou because you do the same thing you did last year. I don't know if obviously the phone isn't ringing for you to go anywhere because we had a
Right.
crazy carousel last year. I don't think that happens again this year. I don't know what that means for him and his situation. So me personally, I'm very curious to know how that Mizzou football team as a whole scales into the SEC because now they have like set opponents that they're going to play, and the schedule is a little bit different this year. And so like this could be a team where we know that they're not very good like by week 5 versus
Right.
it took us like 7 or 8 weeks to figure out Mizzou really wasn't that good of a football team, last season.
Hmm. That's fair. No, that's a great point, and I think that optimism kind of holds a lot of fake weight because Mizzou
It
fans get
does.
excited, and it looks like everything is rolling in the right direction, and then one SEC team kind of pops them in the mouth, exposes them, and then bad tape for 2, 3 weeks in a row, and it's like Mizzou's kind of just out of the picture at that point.
Let me pull up in their schedule really quick just to see. So I've
Yeah.
got Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kansas, Troy. So they kind of play the same three cupcakes to start, which is fine because I think the fourth game was like UMass or something. It's been that way. So it's Mississippi State.
Mm.
I'm not sure if that's at home or away. I can't tell. I think it's away. Then they go Florida, Texas A&M, Ole Miss. Then they have a bye. Then Arkansas. Then Texas, Georgia, Kentucky, Oklahoma. And I'll tell you right now, Kentucky for me is a sleeper team. The Oregon OC went to Kentucky. Forget his name's escaping me right now, but that's going to be a team where we look at and we say, "Oh shit!" Like
Took a
even
leap.
the bottom of the SEC is starting to pick it up a little bit. And
Mm.
so, let's just keep that in mind. So I'm looking at this and I'm seeing one, two. I don't know what Ole Miss is going to be. Three, four. I see 5 losses here without and I don't know what Kentucky does. I don't know if they beat Oklahoma or not. And I'm saying they're going to beat Arkansas. So I see 5 losses there for a Mizzou team, and I don't know what that means for Drake. So let's just keep him in mind as far as like what the future could hold for his team and his production. So let's just keep
Okay.
that in mind. All right,
Let's
I'll jump over to the
yeah,
questions that I have.
yeah.
I'll answer the own question that I got first, which is who's on your early hot seat? Which coaches is early on the hot seat this year? I have a very obvious one, and then I've got a few that I think could work themselves onto the hot seat. So to me, number one, the guy that's really on the hot seat is Lincoln Riley. This isn't being talked about nationally, but his schedule going into this year, he has 4 very losable games. And I think if he goes another 8-4, it's a problem. And I think he's out. He kind of was on the hot seat this year, but with all the carousel, it was very difficult to see where like he might have gotten a better job, honestly, had he left and he didn't. Like kudos to him. But USC plays Indiana, they have Oregon, I think they have Ohio State again. They have a ridiculous schedule, and I marked out 4 losses easily that they could have, and so that's just them being on schedule. So I'm very worried about him as far as the future looks like for him at USC. But a couple other ones I have, Josh Heupel at Tennessee.
Mm.
He's kind of regressed since the 2022 Hendon Hooker year, where they were pretty good, but they just couldn't beat the best teams. I've got Shane Beamer at South Carolina. I think that he's given himself enough leash to where it's like, hey, bud, you got to perform. You're returning what is going to be your superstars. Dylan Stewart's going to be back. The quarterback's going to be back, and Nick
Lenore,
Harbor's
yeah.
going to be back. Lenore Sellers is going to be back. So you have 3 guys that are basically cornerstones of your program are coming back. I have to see something from you. And then Mike Norvell, obviously, he's going to be on the hot seat. And then one more who I don't think people are talking about, but has definitely earned himself on this hot seat list is Steve Sarkisian at Texas. I don't think that you can continue to have the resources and the recruiting class and not beat the best teams in the country. You played Ohio State tough. That's great. That's
That's
awesome.
and you know what? They're on my list too because or he's on my list too. He's the first name that I thought of when I saw this
Mm.
question, and conversation can almost start and end there. Texas plays Texas State week 1. They play UTSA in week 3. Week 2 is Ohio State, and that's at home. And he cannot show his ass again at or against Ohio State, or the hot seat questions will heat up then. I don't care if he's 2-1 at that point after week 3, but after week 3, they have no weeks off. And if you look at
Ooh.
their schedule, they play a lot of teams where they could get some fits from. And they're looking at 3 losses right now in the face for sure. And I think Steve Sarkisian, like you said, with the resources, you have the Arch Manning era come and go, and it falls flat. You're gonna be looking at a team and a program that's gonna want to hit a reset button. And there's a lot of teams out there that would love to have Steve Sarkisian. And so I think with Lincoln Riley, I think there's potential of a mutual agreement of part ways there because I don't think it's working for him. I think he needs to come back to the Midwest and really get a lot of kids and be in a program that really suits his personality and the way that he coaches. And then my next coach, who I think is on the hot seat, deservedly so. I think Sarkisian's on the hot seat for this year, and then going into 2027, he could be fired. I think if this coach either starts the year off bad or isn't bowl eligible, he's out before the winter meetings even starts, and that's Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. When we were growing up, Wisconsin was a premier program in the Big Ten. They had an established running game. You might turn on ESPN and see Wisconsin rushing for 300 yards a game. Jonathan Taylor. I mean, the list goes on guys that used to be at that school. But Wisconsin has turned into this program where the expectations aren't even there. They've had games against Alabama where they host Alabama, got smoked. Went to Alabama, got smoked. And it's like, okay, Wisconsin has regressed into this, I want to say bottom of the barrel Big Ten because they're better than the Rutgers and the Maryland, but they're not very, they're closer to the Rutgers and Marylands than they are to the Ohio States and the Oregons and the USCs. I mean, they're probably right around somewhere with UCLA. And so I think if Wisconsin, who is desperately looking for, that whole entire school is looking for some juice. The basketball program is all right. They're good, but they're supposed to be good. But Wisconsin's football program being bowl eligible or not even bowl eligible at the end of the season, that's that shouldn't even be tolerated. And so I think he's got, another year, maybe even only half a year to figure this out, or Luke Fickell will be gone because he's on the hot seat already, and I think a lot of talks after this season where he's going to enter the season on it. But I think Wisconsin, it's time for that program to turn things around, and that's going to be their first start.
Yeah, the question is, do they have the resources up in Wisconsin to retain and get talent? So that's going to be its own thing. So
I
I
think
guess
that's
that,
a question. I don't think there's an answer
yeah.
for that yet. I think that's a good point. I don't think that question has been answered yet.
And you know what? They retained him. And so the question is like, maybe they don't. Because same
Right.
thing with Mike Norvell at Florida State. And that rolls right into question number two. So over under two coaches fired by week three. What are your thoughts here? Because I think I have an answer, but what do you think?
My answer is going to be under. My two names that I have on this list that could be gone by week 3 are Bill Belichick and Shane Beamer. Bill Belichick, I think, with just kind of the circus that's been North Carolina and his off the field life and everything that just kind of surrounds Bill Belichick nowadays, I think that if UNC were to start 0-3, they would consider leaving. I think he would consider stepping away. I think it might not even be a situation where he's fired, but he looks at it, takes a step back, and is like, you know what, college football is really not just for me. And then we all realize that, like, hey, there's NFL teams that just simply didn't want Bill Belichick. He didn't really want to coach in college, and it's kind of what it is. And then Shane Beamer, you've got, like you said, 3 of some of the top players in the country, and South Carolina has just kind of been kind of a SEC doormat for a little bit now. And Lenora Sellers' era is going to come and go, and they're not going to do much. And the Dylan Stewart, he's going to get drafted into the top 5, but no one's ever really going to remember his career at South Carolina, and they're just going to be this middle of the road team. And I don't think a school like South Carolina can afford to be this middle of the road team. Like I said, when Mizzou has passed them up, Vanderbilt's passed them up. You said Kentucky has a chance to possibly even pass them up this year. It's like, well, what are we doing? And it starts and ends with the head coach, and that's what's going to happen. And so, I think if there's 2 guys that could get fired before week 3 this year, or some prominent schools, it'll be those 2 guys.
Okay, I like that a lot. I have two that I think have a real chance of getting fired too. I want to go back just real quick. South USC actually they canceled their game with Notre Dame, so
That's right. That's
they
right.
actually have 3 losses that I'm marking out. I'm saying Oregon they
Hmm.
lose even though it's at home. I'm giving them Washington. I'm giving them Penn State.
Definitely.
Ohio State, and then they play Indiana a week after that. They have a bye, then they go to Indiana. So they host Ohio State, bye week, go to Indiana. I'm saying 3 losses. I think 9-3. Lincoln Riley gets another shot. I would just like, need him to turn the corner and beat either
Anything
Oregon.
that's not either if it's got to be 9-3 and then like one win away or a tight loss away from like being in the Big Ten championship or something like that. It's got to be
Something like
something.
that. He's got to scale. Now, to me, I when I saw this question, the first thing I thought was, okay, well, what schedules make the most sense as to what could accommodate two people getting fired? Here's what I think. I think number one is Clemson and Dabo Sweeney. I
Yeah.
think by week three he could be fired. Now here's the schedule. They play at LSU September 5th.
Oh.
That's game one. So if that is not competitive, because this is the second or third time they've run this game back before. So if this game is not competitive and LSU jumps out and they just beat the brakes off of Clemson,
Mm.
not good. Even if it's a somewhat close but not winnable game, like it's a 10-point game, but it never felt like that. Then they play Georgia Southern, which they'll win. Then they play North Carolina. You drop that North Carolina game. I'm not as low on Bill Belichick and that team as you are. They at the end of the season were getting better. I really liked where they were headed, so I'm interested in that. If he drops that game, I think he's gone. Then they play at Cal, which is a Friday. Then the next game is versus Miami, and so like that's the first five games that they play are ridiculous. But the first three, I think Clemson could easily let go of Dabo Sweeney. I think they'd be fed up with his antics. I think that they could get a younger guy in there who's with the times, doing NIL, not complaining about guys getting paid and swindled away. Like that's gone. So we talked about that last episode. So I think Clemson has a real chance of letting Dabo go. And then this was no surprise, but just the way the schedule lines up is Mike Norvell at Florida State. So they start the season versus New Mexico State, which is great, be 1-0. Then they play SMU and they host SMU. The very
Big.
next game, they have a bye. And the following week, they play at Alabama. And so if you're 1-2 after that, you're going to play Central Arkansas. So like that's a win no matter who's coaching the team. I think he's gone if you go 1-2 the first three games of the season.
Mm.
And so those two coaches, I feel like I'm watching that and thinking, yeah, the schedules don't line up for you to start slow. You have to get out of the gate. I like Shane Beamer being on your list as well, but unfortunately, he doesn't play a tough start to the season. I don't know if Mississippi State's going to be any good, but they play Alabama week 4, which is a little bit earlier in the season than they usually do. So he could maybe be out by then, but then they play Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee. So he could be a coach that exits early before the season's over. And they play comes at the end of the year. We'll see. But I don't think he gets fired. And then the first, by the end of September, it'd be a little bit longer. So Dabo and Mike Norvell are going to be my answers
I like the
for
Dabo answer
that one.
because I think, you know, even they're just a yin and yang with everything. So if he's going to complain about Ole Miss poaching his players and this and that, well, he's going to have to step up and just win again. And all this talking and complaining, and it can get drowned out by winning. But if you start to lose, people are going to look like, okay, you have your back against the wall, you're complaining, and now you're not winning. It just
Mhm.
seems like this might not be for you here.
For sure. I agree with that. So that kind of goes into the next step that we have here, our next question we got. So who takes the biggest step back in terms of record
Nice. I like
this
this
year?
question a lot. First answer, I think is the obvious one is Indiana. Um,
Okay.
I just think there's a chance that they're 10-2. 9-3 seems almost impossible because of how well coached they're going to be.
Mhm.
But if Fernando Mendoza is as good as we think, then I think they're going to take a step back. And I think there's a chance that Fernando Mendoza was better than we all think, even though his stats might not show it, of rallying that team, the wins. I mean, the Penn State win. I think that, if next year Indiana gets into a tight spot like that, they're probably going to lose. Um, will they beat Ohio State with the quarterback who is coming from TCU, who, what are his personal expectations on the season? Is he trying to win a Heisman? Is this guy going to come in here like Will Howard? Or is he going to come in here and do what he was doing at TCU? Because at TCU, he was good. He wasn't great. I think he was, the best player on their roster. But I don't know if he's the guy that's going to take them over the hump or keep them in a similar position that Fernando Mendoza had. And then my next team is Vanderbilt. Now, they start the season off pretty easy. Austin P, Delaware, and NC State. But then
Mhm.
after that, Auburn, Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi State, Bama, Florida, Tennessee to end the season. That stretch of Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, I think that's very interesting at the end of October. And then Kentucky, Mississippi State, whatever you want to say about them, I think Kentucky will be better, but may not beat Vanderbilt. And then Bama, Florida, and Tennessee to end the year. You're talking about a team that, you talk about Mizzou having 5 losses. I think Vanderbilt is right at that doorstep, knocking on the door of definitely having 4 losses and maybe having 5. And I'm not saying we're going to be sitting here, saying that Vanderbilt misses Diego Pavia. I just think that's kind of the roller coaster of how things go. And if this team's going to be elite, then hats off to them. If they're going to win another 9 or 10 games, that's great. But I don't see it happening this year. I don't think they're going to fall off the face of the earth. I just think that the SEC as a whole is going to take a step up, and I think those games that they won last year are going to come back and they're going to lose them this year.
100%. I think you're not going to beat LSU, I don't think. And
Right.
that was interesting about Vanderbilt is they were like a tough physical team that, had a lot of attitude, but the defense wasn't that good.
They kind
Like
of
it-
lost
they
at the end of the year. Yeah,
they had a lot of games to me that felt like they just kind of escaped. They could have beat Texas at the end of the year. They
they
came
should
back, but
have.
didn't really work out. Yeah, so like there's that, but you lose the guy that was the leader of your team, and you don't really have a cornerstone to lean on anymore. You're an okay running the football team. You were okay throwing it, and your defense isn't very good. That does not line up to me. Like to me, Clark Lee getting the extension that he got at the time that he got it was perfect because this is going to be a step back year for sure. That's a great
Hmm.
call by you.
Hmm.
I have four that just are obvious to me. The first being Ole Miss
I
with
had them
Pete
on my
Golding at the
list too.
helm.
Yeah,
I don't think that you can replicate what Lane was able to do. I think Trinidad Chambliss should have left for LSU. I think he should have gone with the guy that turned him into the superstar that he is. So
right.
I think that's a misstep, him and Charlie Weiss. So that's number one. I just don't think Ole Miss can do what Lane was able to do. I think Lane was underrated in how good of a recruiter and I think talent acquisition. He was underrated in that category, I guess. Number two is Miami. I think
Mhm.
Miami had a lot of things that went their way that could have easily not. If they don't make the playoff, I'm asking Mario Cristobal what he is and what he's doing.
He's on the
You
hot
know,
seat for this year. Yep.
yeah, exactly. And so you lose two games to Louisville and you lost to SMU, like both on the road. But it's like that can't happen. You got fortunate by getting in because you won a game against a
Next
team you
year they lose those games, they'll be out. They'll definitely be out. Yeah.
100%. And so to me, like that, he not on the hot seat, but when they take a look at like who's going to take a step back, I think that you've got that where he might just lose one more game. And if he could easily miss the playoff, and like now you're taking a step back.
Well, who?
Uh,
Quick question for you: Who is going to be their bona fide replacement at quarterback? Do they have some guy that's coming in?
Darian Mensah, he's from Duke.
He,
He's
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 transferring,
yeah, they're
so they're
gonna get
letting
him.
him leave Duke.
Yeah, they're gonna if there's some sort of pay package that they're going to pay Duke as far as the payout goes, and then he'll be able to walk and he'll be on Miami's team. So that's
There's a early contender for overrated player of the year right there. In that
he
situation,
was the highest paid guy, and he has not produced. But
he's
now,
over.
to
That's DJ Lagway Jr. situation coming all over again.
to be fair, Darren Mensah is actually a pretty good player, and I don't know if Duke has the best athletes.
No,
So
but
like,
mhm.
I don't know. We can disagree on this one. We can talk about it later because I think he actually has some star power. If we go back and we put the film on, I think that there are some plays that he made that you're like, yeah, this guy he could do it with the right setup.
We'll see.
You throw the ball to Malachi Tony, buddy, he'll make it look good. And then I think Texas Tech, and I'm sticking the Big 12 here. Texas Tech will take a step back. I think that they kind of caught fire with getting a really good D line. I
Mhm.
think that they caught a lot of people off guard. I think that people didn't understand what this was about. They also had experience at the linebacking core with Rodriguez being
Yep.
there and being a star player. And honestly, showing out at the Senior Bowl practices from what I was seeing is a really good player. So I think they have a chance to really step back. And by that step back, I mean just lose like two games or more. I think it's very doable for them. And then also in the Big 12, BYU. I don't think they're going to be the same team again. I don't think
That's
anybody's
fair.
going to be
Yep.
surprised. I
Hmm.
think that they obviously they returned the quarterback, but it's like this is a very limited football team that maybe last year they played the best they were going to play. Now everybody has their shot, everybody has their number. Like they know how to stop them, put that
Hmm.
Texas Tech film on, and we know what to do. So those are my four as far as taking steps back for the year. Do you have any others, or should I move on to the next one?
No, you can move on because Ole Miss is my next one, and it's kind of depending on if Ahmad or not, if Trinidad Chambliss kind of gets that eligibility back or not.
I think he will. I think again, this is going to be the year of lawsuits as it always is, and they already started Darian Mintz on everything. And Desmond Williams at Washington, same thing. He
Yeah.
damn near ended up in court. He stayed. So who takes the biggest leap? I have two. I'll answer first, and you can go. As far as teams go, I don't know if I'm going to see for the first two names I'm going to read off. I don't know if I'm going to see a record improvement, but I'm going to see a like I can finally watch these teams on TV and enjoy the football I'm seeing. Is Kentucky with Will Stein? That's the Oregon OC that moved on.
Hmm.
Kentucky to me feels like a team that like is going to be right there and will have the offense to like go back and forth with you, which we haven't seen ever. I think you and I were at that Kentucky Mizzou game where
Hmm.
Mizzou lost like off of is a PI and Kentucky scored with like
Yeah,
20
yeah,
seconds
yeah,
left.
yeah.
We were actually at that game. So I think that Kentucky getting back to having a good offense is going to be interesting. They also have a quarterback they brought in. So that'll be fun. And the second is Arkansas with Ryan Silverfield. I think that they have a chance to have some real attitude and be a team that is formidable and could win. Like there are a lot, they were really close to winning some games this year. They folded when it counted the most. I think some of those games this year go in their favor. The coin, turns the other side, and they end up actually having, I don't know if it's going to be a winning record. Again, I don't know if these teams are going to be like bowl eligible. I just think that they're going to be an improvement and actually something fun to watch on television, not just throwaway TV. And then lastly, Oklahoma State. I think they're going to be a
Yeah.
lot of fun to watch. I don't know how competitive the Big 12 really is. Like we had Iowa State sitting up there as a team that like was consistent, had good coaching, and had good players. Well, they're all gone now. I've got Texas Tech. I don't know what they're going to be. Got BYU. There's just a lot of questions around that entire conference, and so I think Oklahoma State could walk in, and obviously they're going to improve the record. They could be a team that competes, and maybe they lose a couple tough games, but like they could be right there looking at the playoff even with maybe what is the best quarterback in the country potentially. So we'll
Nice.
talk about Drew Messermaker maybe in a different episode as far as does he scale or not, but very interesting to see what he could do.
My two teams that I have that can take a big leap um, are SMU and Michigan. I think Michigan has a chance with Kyle Whittingham because I think he's a really good coach.
Hmm.
I think he's going to bring the right talent out, and I think he's going to develop Underwood the right way. And I think last year you looked at Bryce Underwood and you kind of saw like, okay, at the beginning of the season, wow, this kid's got a lot of promise. And as the season won, it's like this kid's not really developing. And you would want your star player, one of the best players in the country that I think he can be, to develop along the season. I don't know what injury he might have had, and now he's going into this offseason fully healthy, hopefully with a better wide receiver core, with some transfers. But I think Michigan has a chance to take a step up and kind of regain that relevancy again. I know it hasn't been that long since they won a national championship, but I see them kind of slipping through the cracks a little bit and not being, the Indiana, the Oregon, Ohio State, even Penn State, I think is still a level above them. So I think they need to take that step up. And then I said SMU. I think Kevin Jennings is going to have a really good year. I think that team is just returning some key pieces on offense that were really going to help. And I just think Kevin Jennings is going to take that leap. You talk about sleeper quarterbacks that I did in the other segment. I just think that SMU has a really good chance to make that leap again. They went 9-4 the year that they went to the playoff, and so it's like that is doable again. They just have to, it's all dependent on how good the ACC is going to be this year. Because if the ACC is going to take a step up, then the SMU is definitely in trouble. But if Miami, Louisville, those, if they Miami kind of returns to normalcy, Louisville doesn't have those regular wins. Clemson is bad again, then I think that SMU has a good a chance as anybody to win the ACC.
I like SMU's coach Rhett Lashlee a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not a believer in Kevin Jennings. I don't see it. I've watched numerous games. I've watched the one where they beat Miami. To me, there's a lot of like he is a lesser version of Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. And I've seen Marcel Reed in big games. He plays very well. And then the playoff, he didn't play as well. And so, like to me, I just don't know what I see.
It's a fair
I don't know what I
comparison.
expect for Kevin Jennings. And so there will be the opposite sides of that. You called Trinidad Chambliss being a star player early. You called Byron Brown being also a star player early. So I'm not going to disagree with you because you certainly have an eye for it. I'm just going to say that I'm not on board yet.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm with that. I think the next that kind of feeds into our next question, which is early Heisman favorite that we got, but not named Arch Manning. Who is on your short list?
Um, my short list, Ahmad Hardy. Big fan of his. Just a really, really great running back. I think he had a lot of momentum last year, and I think going into this year, he probably is officially on a preseason Heisman ballot. And so it's kind of his storyline throughout the year. Like if he has really good, week 3, week 4, by the time it's week 4 and he's Dan Reynolds got like, 800, 900 yards rushing, I think he's going to be right in that conversation. Malachi Tony deserves to be in that conversation preseason. He probably has the most momentum going off of last year and then playing really well in the national championship game against a really good defense. He deserves it. Jeremiah Smith, who I still think is the best overall player in the country. He's got the most accurate quarterback in the country on his team throwing the ball still. Still going to have elite wide receivers next to him. So he's not going to get the one-on-one coverage 24/7 he's going to have. Now, Carnell Tate's going to the draft, so he's going to see a lot more high safety over the top for sure. And then if this guy gets his eligibility granted, then I think Trinidad Chambliss should be up there for the Heisman. Going back to Ole Miss, I think he's going to be the good guy in a lot of people's eyes, not following LSU. He can carry that momentum last year. I think a lot of people wanted to see him win that game in the semifinals last year just because of the story and, Lane Kiffin leaving and this team's depleted and what coaches are leaving. Is he going to leave? Is he even going to get a chance to play next year? So if he does get granted that eligibility, I think that he should be on that list too. But those are my four guys on that list. It was hard for me to come up with the fifth. If I had to come up with the fifth right now, not name Arch Manning, I would probably say Gunnar Stockton or
Hmm.
oof, Gunnar Stockton, or we could throw Dante Moore on there because there's a chance that he has a really, really good year.
Okay. I'm not opposed to that. There are a lot of guys, I think. So to me, Dante Moore is an obvious one. Just him returning the production. I think that we're going to expect a lot from him. I think we're going to get a lot from him. I think your guy, Byron Brown, he's going to be up there. He has a chance. Auburn plays so many football games where they could be a team like LSU and Jaden Daniels won, where the offense is good, but they lose games where he could be the Heisman winning quarterback, but not on the best team. I think he's got a real chance, especially like so there's something about a quarterback that can throw the ball really well, but runs that bitch well too. Like
Yeah.
there's something about a dual threat guy that can just give you 100 yards on the ground that we just like watching. And so to me, he has the chance, like he'll have the most prime time opportunities to be like, is not even the best quarterback in the country. I think Marcel Reed, if he can mature, I think he's got a real chance at it. He lost his OC, Kellen Klein.
Mhm.
He's going back to Kansas State. And so we'll see what that looks like, but they're retooling. He's going
I'm
to be
I'm a
bigger.
big
Go ahead.
fan of Marcel Reed, and I usually don't say this about a lot of quarterbacks, but he's got to put on some weight.
No, for sure.
Too small. He's too small. He takes hits. He's very fragile. He just needs a stronger arm in general. But that would be my biggest thing for him. I really like his game. I really think that he could be an NFL quarterback, but he's got to put on some size.
No, I completely agree with you, and I think he will. I think that's
Yeah.
what it's for. And then I've got Trinidad Chambliss falling out. It's weird because I want to see Trinidad do really well. I also think Pete Golding is not going to do very well at Ole Miss, and so one of those two has to be incorrect.
I think he's
Um,
in over his head a little bit. Pete Golding. That's another conversation,
I
but
think Ole Miss went with like the like kind of the FU. We're not going to do the whole big name guy. We're going to go with the homegrown guy, and like that's just it. We
give it a
saw that with
year. Give it a
Ryan
year.
Day is the only guy it's worked with. Sharon Moore couldn't handle it. We'll
Right.
see what Pete Golding can do. And then I've got Hoover, the kid who will be at Indiana, who's from TCU. Or I think he's got a chance. I think Indiana is going to be a team where we start looking at it as like, this team has rock stars on it, and they're going to get the respect that they're due. And I think Cignetti's going to want to beat the piss out of teams again because that's just who he is.
I
And so
think
I think
there's a
he's going to have some big
chance.
numbers.
I think there's a chance that Signetti kind of goes into this season almost kind of disrespected a little bit with the chip
Yep.
on his shoulder. Like, hey, they think I lost my best player. I don't have
Mhm.
any much else. This is just kind of like lightning in a bottle. So I think he's coaching with something to prove too. So that could be a really good thing.
1000%. And that goes right into the next question of does the Big Ten run through Indiana or Ohio State?
Ohio State. And I think that even though last year Indiana wins and Signetti is the best coach in the conference, Indiana is by far the best team in the conference in the country. But Ohio State is Ohio State. And I think they return right back to where we're used to seeing them, which really last year, up until the Indiana game, everybody kind of thought like this is the best team in the country by far. And so with Julian Sain coming back, obviously Jeremiah Smith, you have Bo Jackson, the running back. You are losing Arvo Reese and Caleb Downs on defense. But Ohio State's showing that they can replace those guys. And I think Ohio State, just with the pedigree that they bring, I think you have to put them as the number one team, maybe not even in the Big Ten, but in the country overall too. So I think the Big Ten still runs through Ohio State. I still think it's the marquee game that every other team in the Big Ten, not named Indiana, is looking to beat because Indiana has kind of slayed the dragon a little bit. But I think Oregon, Penn State, USC, all the other Big Ten schools are really still gunning for that Ohio State win, and that means more. And so I'm gonna say Ohio State. That could change by week 4. We could be, this could be Indiana's conference, but right now I'm going Ohio State.
I don't mind that at all. I think that if you go with just tradition and you keep the brand power, I think that Ohio State's probably the right answer. I think it's Indiana. I think that we're gonna go through the team that has not lost a game since like 2024. And so or 2025, I think sort of been in the playoffs. But either way, I think I'm gonna go with Indiana. I think that they have the best coach in the conference and in the country. I think that they have the best talent evaluators. And I think they have the chance to like reinvigorate what it means to be a small time football team or program to becoming a huge brand. I think they are the inspiration for what I think people at Oklahoma State think could happen, what people I
Mm.
think at Virginia Tech could happen. And so to me, I just feel like that it goes through them. To me, Ohio State has to prove that they like can beat good football teams. It's kind of been a minute since we saw them like win a game convincingly that we were like, yeah, that looks like Ohio State. And so I don't know if it's a Ryan Day thing where he is kind of playing the whole like we're going to save our best for the playoffs. I think Cignetti does the opposite. He's like, we're going to beat the brakes off of you and expose you, but we're going to do the same things we do against UCLA as we're going to do against Miami, and it's all going to work out. And so I wonder if we see a revamp as Ryan Day, kind of as the coach that he is. And I would give Ryan Day this credit because there are not very many human beings that can do this, that can look in the mirror and say, I have not been good enough. I am going to come back better and I'm going to improve my football team and the way my philosophy is around the game. From 2 years ago, he revamps it after the Michigan loss and they win a national championship. And then they kind of ride that high a little bit. They get a little fat, dumb, and happy. They lose some games they shouldn't have lost. And now we're back sitting here like, well, fuck, if Ryan Day loses two more games, like, I don't know, should he be the coach here? So I think that he's going to come back around, but I think that Cignetti's on top. There's not a better coach in the country than him. I think the Big Ten goes through Ohio State and our Indiana. And our last question of the session here that we got from the mailbag is
Mhm.
a writer said, "Am I crazy for thinking Virginia Tech could win the ACC? What do you think?"
I think I think it's a
On
far
a
shot.
scale of 1 to 10, like 10 being
I
the
think
absolute
10
crazy.
being absolutely crazy. I think you're sitting right around a 7.
Okay.
I like James Franklin a lot. I think, he's out to prove something. Any coach that's out to prove something, I think is coaching with a chip on their shoulder. They're not going to let up. And, you know, improvement is the only thing they're going to see. Improvement from Virginia Tech and then improvement from the last thing that we saw at Penn State, which I think is not going to be very hard for him to duplicate. But you have an entirely changed over roster. You have a bunch of guys who were committed to Penn State and now are going to Virginia Tech. You have some Virginia Tech guys that are staying. But I'd imagine he probably gutted out the bottom half of that entire roster. And who he replaced them with, I don't know. But is it fair to think that Virginia Tech can win the ACC? No, I don't think it's fair, but I think there is a realistic shot that the ACC continues to fall flat, especially at the top, to where somebody could sneak in there. Because I don't think Clemson is going to be that great this year. The question is around their quarterback and the rest of their talent, and Clemson's one bad season away from the rest of the talent leaving that entire program. And then you have teams like Miami where we don't really know where they're going to fall, and in Virginia Tech, a well-coached team can beat a Miami. SMU, Cal, all these teams are in the middle of the road that we don't really know about. The Virginias who just got Bo Peep, like they're probably not taking a step forward versus Chandler Morris, but like Virginia Tech, who's wins 22-20 versus Washington State, and then is almost in the playoff. Like you know, it's shit, just weird shit just happens in the ACC to where you know, I want to say Virginia Tech is not going to win the ACC, but I'm not going to 100% rule them out because of a good coach and because this talent might really transfer over, and we see just how well the transfer portal really actually works.
So I agree with that a bit. I think I'm gonna bring your prediction or your number down from a 7 to a 5. I think that there is a realistic pathway. And I just want to say this because I think it's really important to understand how close some of these things are. Duke won the ACC with 5 losses.
Yeah.
Okay. The very bottom of the league was Syracuse with 9 losses. So there's a 5 game swing there. Okay. Now that sounds like a lot, but if I go to the Big 12 as an example, let me go here first. If I go to the Big 12, the losingest team was 1-11. The winningest team was 12-2. So that's a humongous gap. If we go to the Big Ten, very similar. The losingest team was 2-10. The winningest team was 16-0. We go to the SEC. Let me go ahead and scroll there. Same thing. The winner was 12-2. The loser was 2-10. And so I think the ACC is compressed when it comes to maybe it could be talent, it could be coaching, it could be whatever, where I think that there are a lot of like random bounces that happen that could really yo-yo a team to being in a position that they don't deserve to be in, like Duke playing Virginia in the ACC championship, which was cold and rainy. It should be in a freaking dome somewhere. But it's like, how does that happen? It's like, man, maybe Virginia Tech could. Maybe a good disciplined team who loses 4 games could be in the championship game.
Yeah.
And we're talking about them in the playoff. And I would love to see James Franklin get in first year. So I'm going to put that at a 5. I don't think it's going to happen. But if it was starting to form that way, I wouldn't be shocked. James Franklin's a great coach. And the ACC is also really weird. And so all of that together spells out to me, yeah, he has a chance.
Yeah. All right, that will do it for our mailbag episode. Today we will continue to do these as the off season goes on. It's going to be a lot, but we will continue to do mailbag and we will continue to answer these questions for you guys. This is First and Cam. Thank you to my co-host Evan, and we are out.